And that brings us to our first conceptualization, and that's the fact that we have to understand that the entire global economy is comprised of these individual parts. It's comprised of a sum of over 200 national economies. Just like this particular class or course that you're in, all the various students. You come from all the various backgrounds, different origins, different racial backgrounds, different religions, different genders. But together, you guys all comprise this course, Human Geography. So we think about the global economy. To understand it, it's one entire economy, one entire system comprised of all these individual parts. But with that being said, when we see very much the interconnected, the globally linked economy, what we see is the Lorenz butterfly effect. What the idea here is the Lorenz butterfly, it's a metaphor. It says the butterfly flaps its wings over South America. Eventually that's going to trigger and create a tsunami or an earthquake on the opposite side of the world. So it says something small can actually impact a much greater area. And I used the example beforehand, 9/11. Not saying that was a small event, but it occurred just in one area of the world. But there's no doubt that that had a huge ramifications on the overall global economy. More recent, the global economic recession of 2008 to 2000 whatever. That economic recession occurred in particular areas in developed countries, but no doubt had its effect all spread throughout the world. Further, a farmer in a field in the middle of nowhere, South America or Central America, is cognizant or aware of different prices of the global market for his commodity, for his crop, or her crop. And so essentially, because of this globally linked economy, they're now deciding what to grow, how much of it to grow, based on what's happening in the global markets, what's happening in particular areas in which they're selling or buying, trading these commodities. Further, we have to understand that there's these various formal and informal economies that comprise the 200 plus individual national economies. And so we got two key types. A formal economy is one that's government regulated. Essentially, the government knows about it. It's also referred to as the official economy. And so it's essentially all that is, those types of jobs that are taxed, monitored by the government, have pensions. And so they're always going to be included in economic measures because that's data that the government actually observes and tallies and then reports. In the informal economies, those are like what we call the black market. Those are where there's no government regulation, no taxes, no benefits, no institutions. And these aren't going to be included in economic measures because no one knows about them. They're not stuff that's reported. For example, if you do babysitting, and so you might do babysitting in which you go babysit for a night, the couple, the parents come back home, they give you $50, and you're on your merry way. None of that's reported with the government. Although, there's definitely wealth being generated. There's someone making money. There's the movement of capital, the movement of cash from one person to another. And so informal economies are definitely a part of the economy. However, they're not ever going to be included in economic measures because they're not known. Further, I always ask this in big, huge lecture halls and always elicits funny responses. Raise your hand if you're a drug dealer. And of course, no one raises their hand. But if you sell drugs, weed, coke, heroin, whatever, that's an example of unregulated black market informal economy activity. Because you're not obviously going to be making sure that that bag of whatever that you sold is registered with the government and then reported in taxes. Of course not. And I mention all of this because in developing countries or poorer countries, oftentimes informal economies or illegal activities even further are often not counted in their economic data. And so that's something we have to consider as we have these formal and informal economies that comprise the sum of 200 individual national economies that makes up our global economy. Further, there's different economic systems or different ways in which countries view how the economy should be run. And we've got the far left, communism, which is the communal ownership of all resources and properties and the means of production. Essentially, in communism, everyone has an equal piece of the pie. Countries, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, to a certain extent are examples of communistic countries in which that's how they view the economy in their countries as it should be ran. Next up, we have somewhere kind of in the middle, socialism. That's where the government owns some of the means of production or some of the resources, or perhaps a little of both, and the rest is privately held by individuals. Sweden, China, Russia are examples of countries in which economically they run their countries from a socialism perspective. Further, over on the far right, we have capitalism. That's where all resources and all means of production are in private ownership by individuals. And so that's where we have ownership by just a few. And so some examples, United Kingdom, Germany, and the United States, for the most part, are capitalist countries. So essentially what we have is we have the formal and informal economies, but also these different economic systems, but together they all comprise this globally linked modern global economy.